Exodus 17. Let's call this one Beach House and subtitle it maybe Water and a Staff. Why water and a staff? Well, once again, the children of Israel are going to test God in this chapter, and they're going to do it by once again craving or needing water. And instead of asking God through something like prayer or simply asking Moses once again to intercede for them, they're going to once again grumble. Why? Because as we said in the previous chapter, they have refused to check bad habits. And it's going to seem as though we got two choices in life, much like they do. We can either slip into bad habits inadvertently, or we can consciously choose them. And it's looking like they're consciously choosing bad habits. Why? Because as we said before, at the Red Sea, they grumbled. After the Red Sea, God tested them with needing water, and they grumbled. Likewise with food, they grumbled for the food they had back in Egypt, and he gave them everything they needed at each of those junctures. So now, once again, having been satisfied after grumbling, they're going to grumble again for water. And the word is literally going to tell us it is to test God in two different points. Verse 2, therefore the people quarreled with Moses and said, give us water to drink. And Moses said to them, why do you quarrel with me, and why do you test the Lord? And repeat it again after God actually gives them the water. This is the famous story of the water from the rock in verse 7. And he called the name of the place Massah and Meribah because of the quarreling of the people of Israel, and because they tested the Lord by saying, is the Lord among us or not? And in this chapter, the water is going to be an interesting contrast to the staff. Why the staff? Well, because in the very next set of verses, verse 8 through 16 are going to carry us through the end of the chapter, and they're going to describe Israel's first war, and it's going to be a war with Amalek. And it's another famous story where as long as Moses' hands are raised up with the staff of God in them, they prevail in the battle. But when his hands come down with the staff presumably in them as well, then Israel starts to lose. And so Aaron and another man by the name of, I think it's Hur, there you go, help Moses by holding his hands up throughout the end of the victory of Israel over Amalek. And so we're seeing two different paths. We're seeing Israel go down a path where as soon as they see that no matter what the effect is on Moses or God, they can get what they want as long as they grumble. They're continuing to grumble, even though they're getting indications on each step of the way that it's infuriating or frustrating the people who are working with them, or in God's case, in Moses' case, on their behalf. Moses, on the other hand, he wasn't perfect either. God asked him at the Red Sea, why are you standing there? Raise the staff, part the sea. But it seems that this time Moses gets it, because we don't see a specific instruction for God to tell him to raise the staff during the battle. And so we don't know whether or not that's something that's left out of the text that God actually told him to do, but we see literally in this story, Moses raising the staff and simply noticing that as it's raised, they win, and as it's lowered, they lose. And so, not to read too much into the story, it seems as though Moses is learning to adjust his behavior. On the other hand, Israel is learning ways in which they can subtly or maybe even underhandedly try to modify God's behavior by whining anytime they want something, because they're getting in the habit of seeing no matter what the effect is, once again, on God and Moses, they simply get what they want. Why is that important? Because if we are eroding the underlying relationships let's be flat out honest about what Israel's doing at this point, while we are manipulating the people around us, then what have we really gained? In the short term, Israel is getting what they want, but they are deteriorating their relationship with God. On the other hand, Moses is still getting his needs met as well, but he's building his relationship with God by considering what it is that God wants and how it is affecting him emotionally. Eventually down the road, he is going to turn Israel over to their way, and their way is going to lead to 40 years of walking in circles. Jesus puts it this way. At the end of the Sermon on the Mount, he's going to talk about the difference between building on sand and building on rock. Moses is building a relationship on the rock in the sense that he is getting his immediate needs met in a way that will allow them to endure. Israel is simply focusing on what they can manipulate to get what they want right now. And the question for us is, if we're simply exhausting the people around us while we're getting our way, what do we really win?